Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Ruth Kara-Ivanov Kaniel. Is a senior lecturer in the Department of Jewish History at the University of Haifa and research fellow at Tel Aviv Institute for Contemporary Psychoanalysis and at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. She received her PhD from the Hebrew University and has published many articles and several books in both English and Hebrew, including some of her titles in English are Holiness and Transgression, Mothers of the Messiah in Jewish Myth, which came out in 2017. Another title is The Feminine Messiah, King David in the Image of the Shekhinah in Kabbalistic Literature. And one more title, Birth in Kabbalah and Psychoanalysis, published 2022. Her recent work, authored with Noam Leffler, entitled Dreams and Revelations of Rabbi Avraham Hayechini, was awarded the Dean's Prize for Outstanding Academic Publications 2024 by Bar-Ilan University Press. Also, she won several awards and scholarships. I will not read them all because there are quite many of them. And beyond her academic work, she published a 3 award-winning collection of poetry in Hebrew. The world has no silence, the soul is moved, and Diamond and Ashes. We are happy to have her here today, and she will speak on her subject for about 1 hour, and then we'll have half an hour for discussion. So please.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Ada and Doron, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those who are on Zoom. I hope you can hear me on Zoom. Okay. So, as Doron said, I'm dealing with the Messianic riddle, and I think it's one of the most prominent and never-ending questions in every religion and culture. We need messianic hopes. We always have hopes. And the way we present the figure of the Messiah actually reflects the images of our broken world and what we trying to repair. In every culture and every religion, we have this concept of personal Messiah. But he's never only historical, specific figure, though combination of wishes and hopes of the whole culture and maybe the whole history and the condensed ideas of every religion. In my lecture today, I will concentrate on the 3 Abrahamic religions, and I will share a PowerPoint presentation, and I hope you can see it both here and also on Zoom. And I would like to say that I have a claim that not the Messiah stands at the center of Jewish and Kabbalistic. I'm a scholar of Kabbalah, as Don said. Not only Kabbalah, I'm dealing also with Midrash and biblical literature, but Kabbalah is, I'm focusing on Kabbalistic literature and the Zohar. In Kabbalistic literature, I would claim that the Messiah is not the only hero, and we will learn that the same happens in the Abrahamic religions, especially in Christianity, since the Gospels, since the beginning of Christianity, with the concept of the mother of the Messiah. More than the son, the chosen son, there is a huge question why he was born in the way he was born, the miraculous birth of the Messiah. What is his attachment and connection to his mother? Maybe not one mother, rather a lineage of feminine mothers of the Messiah. And there is a claim already at the ancient time in the world of the sages, what we call the Talmud, but it's, I would say that the biblical corpus ends around the 4th century BC. And then we have this liminal state of apocalyptic writings and apocryphal, I'm sorry, apocryphal literature, and we have the beginning of Christianity. But the world of the sages, we can look on it from the 2nd century until the end of the editing of the Talmud at the 7th century. So this is the world of the sages. And the claim is that the Messiah is a Messiah due and thanks to his mothers, both in Christianity and Judaism. Later, we will see what happens in the Quran regarding Mary, which is also a very important point in the development of this idea. So speaking from the perspective of psychoanalysis, which is important in my research, and I think it gives us clues to understanding this riddle, the Messianic riddle, we can claim that the Messiah never stands alone, and the Messianic idea revealed itself through attachment, through relationship, the most intimate relationship of mother and son, not a father. The father is the missing one. He's the sublime, the divine figure. He's not there. And it's interesting because talking about Oedipus and the Oedipal complex, we should think what's going on in the beginning of those two religions, Judaism and Christianity, who many times stands as two sisters or revival brothers. It depends in different, also at the church fathers' writings, how they describe those family, intimate relationship between Judaism and Christianity. But we have this dyadic relationship of mother and son. And we have miraculous birth. And the mother itself always oscillates between harlotry and some not proper sexual behavior and virginity, which is actually in a way the same thing, because it's abnormal identity and kind of problematic feminine identification. In feminist terms, we talk about those facets and faces and aspects of femininity, and how can the feminine and the woman integrate their different sides in the split, which is the most ancient split between Lilith and promiscuity and Eve, or Mary and Eve. Mary is the second Eve. She came to correct the sins and to rectify the sins of the sinful mother. So we have this split in different cultures. And how the Messianic idea, working with these aspects, sometimes they are contradicted, sometimes they're united in one narrative. We will see different examples through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, but it always comes back to the family, to this dyad of son, mother, and son, to questions of birth, profilation, I hope I say it correctly, because it's also Ars Poetic question. Messianity always deals with the question how we are fruitful, and what is the new thing which changes reality, and in a way is a sign for a better or another life to come, here or there. But it's always in a way should break the line of history to a mythical, contradictory reality. So it's for a beginning, those statements. And the last thing I want to say dealing with Kabbalah, and we are already going to the riddle, that in Kabbalah, David is a feminine Messiah. In the Zohar, which is the most important book written in the 13th century Castile, although traditionally it is attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai at the 2nd century, running from the Romans and hiding in the cave, and he's with his son in some versions. We have the Palestinian Talmud version, the Babylonian version, the Midrashim. But anyway, the Zohar claims that David is a feminine Messiah. And I want to ask the question, how comes? Why? Why to put on the stage of the main figure, the collective dreams, as Otto Rank would describe the idea of the Messianic idea as a collective dream, to put a feminine figure. What does it? What we learn from it about Judaism, and how another religions and interfaith dialogue and polemics influenced the Kabbalistic thought flourished in the 13th century in the Zohar. So I will shortly show you a few developments in the figure of David from the Bible up to Kabbalistic literature, and then we will go back to Christianity and Islam. We'll use, okay. So we have this concept of David as the night hero and the day hero, those two aspects of David. On the one hand, he's the killer, and as you have here the quote from Halbertal and Holmes, he's corrupted, powerful, tyrannic leader. We know these kind of leaders also nowadays in different places. And people who feel at home, as he says, with power, and have no guilt, taking no responsibility, and can use everyone around them, instrumentalization of others in every way he can do. He uses women, men, and he's dealing with getting more and more power. This is, on the one hand, this figure of David in the epic description in the book of Samuel. We have it. On the other hand, we have totally different figure in Psalms. And if you check the book of Psalms, you see that David is the one who is crying to God, everybody are against me. I'm so lonely. I'm so weak. The word heart repeated itself many times in Psalms. His heart is broken and only God can rescue him. And he's alone and everybody hunting him and so on. So we have this kind of very interesting transmission within poetry and day life. The one who is killing, as it said in Chronicles, you have shed much blood, and this is the reason he cannot build a temple. You live in so religious culture. It's so beautiful here. I feel so grateful to be here and to see all those temples here in Kyoto, in Japan. We know what does it mean, a holy place. And God says to David, you cannot touch a holy place. You are touched from holiness because you're full of blood. You're a killer. So how it comes together, all those facets of Davidic persona, and maybe already here we have kind of a repressed aspect, the one who is playing in front of Saul, and he knows how to calm the crazy king from his depression, and he's one who connected to music. Shira is dealing a lot with music, she can tell more about that, but a person whose anima is developed in a way, and he's attached to the night world, because most of Psalms were written at night. So it's something about his femininity, which connected later in the Zohar to his darkness. I'm trying here to think through Jungian also prism, because Jung always connects anima to the hidden aspect of the soul and the nightlife of David, which is contradict his day life and his tyrannical behavior. Okay. And then we go to the Talmud. Something very interesting happens in the Talmud. In the Talmud, David is no more a killer. Rather, he is full of blood, but different kind of blood totally. He is full of blood of a placenta, of the fetus, because the only thing he's doing, he's a judge, he's a pious man, he's Talmid Chacham, he's sitting in the Beit Midrash, and the whole day he's dealing with blood of others, of life, not of death. He's not killing people, he's giving life through halachic dispositions and declares. He's dealing with the Torah, and the battle he's devoted to is the battle of Torah study. So we see how they know to play with images and concepts. David transformed from very manipulative figure into something much more soft and devoted to the Torah study. He's even teaching others. You see it here in the text. He is in the source from Tractat Sanhedrin. He is teaching others. He who commits adultery with a married woman is executed by strangulation. Yet he has a portion in the world to come. But the one who publicly puts his neighbor to shame has no portion. You put me in shame, he says to his friends in the Beit Midrash, and you are in troubles because you have no portion to the world to come. But I killed Uriah. It's not such a big deal. He became pious more than everybody, and he's teaching others. He's preaching, Matif. And sages say he is established the yoke of repentance. He's the head of the three patriarchs. He's higher than all other figures in the Jewish movement. This is one way of showing how already in the Talmud, David is adored as what a student, Joseph Campbell, wrote this beautiful work called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. David, he is the hero with 1,000 faces. In the Bible, we see those faces through his day and night life. And then in the Talmud, we see suddenly totally different figure, new mask that he has. And the sages see themselves through David's eyes. They want to be him. He is the example of repentance, of the right way to repent. And since sages deal the whole day with what is allowed and what is not, and with the halachic world, so David is the great example for them of being Baal Tshuva, how you repent, and what is this image of the best repentant. There is another mythical motif, which is connected also to the riddle of the mother and son, claiming that David was born dead. And here I want to ask this question because I think it's really interesting. The idea that the Messiah has no life. The Zohar will later emphasize a lot on this idea. The Messiah was born with no life. He is non-viable baby. And then something happened. And Adam, the great primordial man, gives David 70 years. So his life is borrowed. And if I speak through the eyes of the Kabbalah already, it's very important to not to be isolated. This is the idea the Zohar will take from this statement. Actually, Adam and David are archetypal. It's like the beginning of the world, Adam and then David. And Adam gives his blood and his life into David's life. So it's something very interesting also to be dead and resurrected. I hope it reminds you something. Resurrected baby. And we have this statement in the last text you have in front of you, Messiah. Do you call Messiah Bar Nafle? As it written, in that day I will raise the tabernacle of David, Sukkah David Nofelet. So he is the fallen, Nofelet. He is a Nefel. He is a dead, and he became back into life. And we think, of course, about Jesus, about being born against all conditions. The historical tradition regarding Mary was the Roman soldier, Pantera, raped Mary, and then the whole myth of virginal birth is a solution to this tragedy of the rape of Mary. In order Joseph would not leave her alone. And still, against the halacha, leave her as his wife. So we have here connection and kind of interfaith already, not only polemic, but influence. And look at this statement at the text here, David, third from the end. David is expected to return from the death. We have it in one of the main important texts in the Babylon Talmud, Perek Chelek, dealing with the Messiah. He's expected to return from the dead. And God destined to establish another David. There is a parallel statement in the Palestinian Talmud saying that if David is from the dead, if the Messiah is from the dead, he's David. If he is from the life, he's David. So you see clear influence, interfaith influence of the resurrected Messiah and of the kind of a double hero, because David, the historical one, is dead already, but he will come again. He's here always. He's part of the infinite messianic hope. He will come again. You can call it borrowing from the Christian neighbors or kind of a struggle. Who is the real resurrected hero? But we have clear connection to the Christian myth. Okay, now the Zohar. So you have this Kabbalistic tree. I'm sure you have seen it before. And the last Sphira, which is at the bottom of the tree of Sphirot, at the end, called Malchut, Shechina. She is the divine consort. She is the one the Kabbalists worship. She is the great, the heroine of the Kabbalists. And what is striking is its connection to the upper low Sphira of Keter, the divine higher presence of the crown of Ein Sof, the infinity, because Keter is also called Keter Malchut. And this quality is something unique to Kabbalah. The one who is lower, who is in this reality, not like the, for example, Neoplatonic idea of Sophia that is thrown away and she is attached to this world, and the feminine, which is, she's actually has the power to get upper, and she can be higher than all the other Sphirot. Here already we have concept of Kabbalah, which deals with transformation and fluidity and movement. And here it's also a claim I want to make that at least in the Jewish Messianic myth, through the eyes of Kabbalah, the main concept is fluidity. If we deal with identity, and we always deal with identity, because Messianic ideas never left only philosophical, or when we deal with mythical aspects of Messianic idea, with biography, with lineage, with attachment, with family relationship, we see that what the most important to the Kabbalist is the transformation of David. He's both masculine and feminine. He is identified with the Shekhinah, who is the broken, who is helpless, who needs power and life, who is born dead, who's supposed to resurrected, who's supposed to get life and light from others, who's supposed to be supported by reality. And unlike the dichotomy starting from Aristotle and Plato, and then we have it in Neoplatonic thought, this again split between the feminine and the matter, and the masculine and the high and clean and pure, we can say, ideas and concepts, the Kabbalah mixed it all together. Because the Shekhinah she's the matter, but she's also become the higher aspect of the light, of divine light, and of the Keter. Okay, so let's see a few images in Kabbalistic literature regarding David. The Zohar says that God has another David. You see it here. I'm not going to read it all, but let's see only the bold statement, because the supernal David is beautiful, and the blessed Holy One earns to cling to him. And God gazing upon this David, he is giving mercy to this world thanks to the beauty of David and love to him. So what's going on here? There is a scholar, a prominent scholar of Kabbalah, Elliot Wolfson, who is reading in the Zohar many examples of homoerotic attachment. Other scholars, like from teachers from Jerusalem, Moshe Idel and Yehuda Libes and others, they claim that it's not homoerotic at all. It's not David and God. It is the Shekhinah and God who has this union of anima and animus, masculine and feminine. But you see here, transition, if I go for a second back, you have seen in the Talmud the concept of another David. God will raise another David. And here you have a new idea. Who is this another David? It's the Shekhinah. It's the divine consort, the beloved Shekhinah. There is a claim that the Shekhinah in Kabbalah raised by the influence of veneration of Mary. Talking about Europe, 13th century in Castile, and those writers who live in an environment, they see all those poems written to Mary. Alfonso, the wise Alfonso, the king, who is writing 400 cantigas, love songs to Mary, and they see it on the churches, in the architecture, in the streets. All the devotion to Mary influenced the images of the Kabbalists. They see synagogue and ecclesia, the image of those two presentations of the two cultures, and they developed the concept of Shekhinah as an answer to veneration of Mary, as the Jewish goddess whom they worship. But here we see, of course, radical transition. She is not virgin at all. She herself was not born from Immaculate Conception. She is much more like the harlot mothers of the Messiah in the Bible. We will talk about them soon. Why? Because she's attached to each tzaddik, each righteous. She's united with them in an erotic form. She is with God, but also with the righteous, with the tzaddikim. She's there for everybody. And yet, this is the variation of the goddess of the Kabbalist. So it's, of course, an answer to the philosopher of the time of Kabbalah. For example, Maimonides, the great philosopher of the Jewish world, who was so much against, attachment to the body, to the senses. חוש המישוש חרפה הוא לנו. איך תתרגם את זה לאנגלית? The sense of feeling and touch is the most disgraced and condemned thing. This is Maimonides, and only השגת המושכלות, divine mentalization and the truth and the truth and the ideas, the divine truth. And here we see totally different construction, the body, the eros, this world, attachment to all senses. Shekhinah is the senses. She's the most beautiful of the world. Many senses are celebrated in the Zoharic literature. Doron can help me to say that it's true. I'm not inventing anything. Nachon?
Right.
So we have here an answer to the philosophers also from the perspective, psychological perspective. The God of Maimonides is a solid, stable, the first cause, סיבה ראשונה. This is the philosophical concept of God. סיבה ראשונה. He is not influenced by anyone. In the Kabbalah, it's totally different. Divinity is not one, rather 10 powers, 10 figures, 10 aspects. They are all interwoven, one with the other. There is a lot of those sexual union between sphirot. We have incest in the divine family. We have feminine and masculine aspect of divinity. We have kind of celebration of mixture of powers, and God is vulnerable. This is an answer to philosophers. This is an inner struggle in Jewish world, because God is never enough to himself. He's not whole. He is deficient, he needs, he lacks, he's longing, he needs humans, and he needs the Shekhinah, and he's dependent, he's vulnerable. Totally different picture of theological beliefs, and thus also the Messianic idea changes radically, because the Messiah is also vulnerable, and he can be feminine, and he can be like God, the feminine aspect of divinity, the Shekhinah. David attached in the Zohar to the lacking moon. We can read a little bit from the text you have in front of you. When the moon is deprived of light and does not shine, she is impoverished on all sides and darkened without any light at all. So he's the night, he's the dark side. He's also attached to death, as we have seen. He was born dead. When the sun turns back toward him, David, which is the Shekhinah, she adorns herself for him, like a female adorning herself for a male. In the Kabbalistic world, adorning, kishut, is also tikkun, rectification and repair of divinity. Divinity needs humans to rectify and improve itself. This is the idea of theurgy in Kabbalah. We influence God, positive theurgy and negative theurgy. So David adorned himself in the same manner. Sometimes he's poor, sometimes he is rich, and this playfulness of roles, of aspects, is the power of the Messiah. He can adorn himself in different colors. He can be everything he wants, the masculine, the feminine. He can change masks, and being the one who changes role, this fluidity, is the Messianic actually power, not only in the future, but also in the present time. Being Messiah means the ability to change yourself, to be converted into something else. That's why later, I'm not going to talk about it now, but when Shabtai Tzvi, who identified himself with the feminine David, converted to Islam, it's also power of the Messiah to convert, to change totally himself from inside out. Okay, so here I want to suggest this idea that although the Shekhinah is located at the bottom, we already have seen it, she has the ability to ascend. And something about this ascension, which is also, of course, connected to ascension of Mary and assumption of Mary, it changed in the Jewish world also by the influence of Christian rituals. Because when we speak about the ancient world, in the beginning of the appearance of the Gospels, Mary is still in the Holy Family, but she's not part of the divinity. But in the Middle Ages, we have some transitions of the stature of Mary and her position and attachment of her and her son. And then it also influences the Shekhinah in David as something which is identified and reflect one the other. Gender inversions, androgynous hybrids, and marginal states in Kabbalistic literature are neither biological nor sociological category. Rather, we talk about phenomenological aspects of God. The fluidity may represent a polemic against halakha and philosophy in the generation of the Zohar. You know, in halachic world, we don't have much time to talk about it now, but in halakha, it's very strict the way you, even androgynous. David is androgynous in Kabbalah. So in the halachic corpus, it's very important how you treat the androgynous as feminine or masculine. You should separate, and everything is ruled by these definitions. And the Kabbalah celebrates the mixture, the ambiguity of both sides. But I want also to suggest that a feminized version of David it's an answer and also influence of Christian polemic and dialogue. David as Shekhinah serves as alternative to both Mary and Jesus. He also may represent the fragile reality of the Kabbalist, who, deprived of political sovereignty, find in the phantasmatic and fantastic realm of the Sfirot a sense of power. Why I suggest that? Because David is called Malchut. Malchut means kingdom. You don't have any kingdom in reality. So where do you go? To divinity, to fantasies, to Sphirotic world. And they create the whole structure of identification with Messiah, who has a lot of power, but in this imaginal, closed world of Kabbalah and imaginary kingdom. And the Malchut, who looks like she is so lower, she's actually can ascend and be the higher power. I also would add that there is an aspect of internalization, talking about, again, psychoanalysis, Afnama. When you think about, Jews were accused to be feminine. There were claimed that they have menstruation. And already in the Talmud, Daniel Boyain wrote about the sages as feminine because they're not in the real world. They live in the world of the Torah, of the book. So this femininity, instead of being an aspect of lack, became an aspect of power. I'm thinking about the Kabbalists claiming our Messiah is feminine. What they actually say about condemning femininity, about hierarchies and gender hierarchies in the world around them, in different aspects, in the culture, in Christian culture, in halachic, in philosophy. Of course, we have the hierarchy that the masculine is higher than the feminine. And then they say the Messiah is a feminine power. It's kind of a subversive way of talking about the Messianic idea. Okay. Last comment about David in a Christian world of this time. Ruth Mazo-Karas, she wrote a book about David as a figure of masculinity in Christian medieval culture. And she shows that at the same time the Zohar is written, more and more masculine aspect of David as a king, as a prophet, as a leader, appears in the writing of thinkers, of theologians in Christianity. So it's really interesting to ask why. Let's read a little bit from this. Medieval masculinity contained both the idea of dominance and the idea of male passion. And that's why the sin of David is explained in such positive way in the writing both of the Zohar and Christian theologies, but from different reasons. Totally different reasons lead thinkers in medieval world to interrupt David's sin as a tool of improvement, of repentance. The Kabbalists, they use the sin as a power to ascend from the lower aspect of Shekhinah to the higher, because only the repentant and the poor can go upper and become at the bottom of the structure. And in medieval Christian, the church fathers and others, we see that it became a virtue, his way of behavior, because it's the opposite side. It is about power, and it's connected to the kings and the monarchy of real politique of medieval time. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about Mary and the mother of the Messiah. So we have this very, very known lineage of David in Matthew. I'm not going to read it, but you have in bold the names of 4 women mentioned in the lineage. Tamar, who was a harlot and seduces her father-in-law, Yehuda. Rachav, who clearly was a harlot, we know, in the biblical world. Ruth, and the wife of Uriah, whose name is Bathsheba, but here they didn't mention her. Now, what is the statement about Mary when we read this lineage? On the one hand, of course, what you see here, that she's the opposite of those sinner mothers from the Bible. On the first glance, it's a polemic. It's clear polemic against. But as we can say in a Freudian, very, very basic term, return of the repressed, Mary is, in a way, continuation of this lineage. She's not only the opposite of them, she's the continuation because they attribute her to this lineage. And we know that there is a problem because David is not a son of Joseph. He's a son of God. So he's not attached to the house of David because Joseph attributed to the house of David, but he's not the father. There is a way of solving this lack in a text called Gospel of Jacob. It's internal text. In Christianity, attributing also Mary herself to the house of David, because we need also the feminine and maternal connection, not only the paternal, since there is a problem. Yet I want us just to look on this idea of many mothers and continuation of the lineage through those mothers. It's important because we know nothing about David's, his own mother. In the Bible, it said nothing. He appears suddenly. He's a shepherd. He's playing on a lyre in front of Saul. We know nothing about his own birth. So we will see that a late midrash that influenced both by Christianity and maybe also Islam plays with the idea that the person can have many mothers, not a one. And they can be both virgins and harlots. All those contradictions, they help us to see this hero with 1,000 faces developed in Kabbalah. So let's see for a moment this midrash, and then I will go back to, I want to show you this midrash. Okay, this is the midrash telling a story about the birth of David. Maybe Doron, can I ask you to read us?
Miraculous birth narrative, David's mother. Okay, the stone which the builders rejected has become the headstone. This is from Psalms. David was the son of the beloved wife. The others said David was the son of the hated wife. Ishai abstained from sexual relations with his wife for 3 years. And after 3 years, he acquired a beautiful handmaid and lusted after her. He said to her, "My daughter, prepare yourself for tonight so you can come to me, and thus you will be emancipated." The handmaid went and told her mistress, "Deliver you, my soul, and my master from hell." The mistress answered her, "What is the reason?" So the handmaid told her everything. Said the mistress, "My daughter, what can I do, seeing as he has not touched me in 3 years?" The handmaid answered, "I will give you advice. Go and prepare yourself, as will I, and tonight when he says to close the door, you will enter and I will leave." And so that is what they did. At night, the handmaid stood and extinguished the light. She then went to close the door, and her mistress entered as she left. The mistress was with him all night and conceived David. Because of Ishai's lust for the handmaid, David's redness stood out among his brothers. After 9 months had passed, when they saw he was a redhead, her sons wished to kill her and her son David. The Lord said, "Rise and anoint him, for this is the one." Ishai and his sons trembled with fear, and David's mother was inwardly happy and outwardly sad. When Samuel took the cup of salvation, then Samuel stood up and kissed him, David, on his head, and said, the Lord said unto me, you are my son. The son who was rejected by his brothers has become the headstone of the corner and surpassed them all. This is from Yalkut HaMechiri.
Thank you so much, Doron. This is the late Midrash. According to Avraham Grossman, it was written already influenced by Muslim world. So we have here many traditions collected together. We will talk now at the end about Mary in the Quran, but before I want to look with you how this text is actually interpretation of different narrative, intertextual reading of the biblical stories of mothers, different mothers, not only direct mothers of the Messiah. You know, Rahab, we don't have connected to Davidic lineage. It's only Matthew adds, as a writer, he adds to emphasize the promiscuity of this lineage. But we have Ruth, Tamar, and Ruth coming from the daughters of Lot. And we have Rachel and Leah. And most of all, of course, this late Midrash based on the story of Rachel and Leah. One is hated, one is beloved. One is beautiful, and she's barren. The other, what we know about her eyes, we don't understand what the Bible hinted in this statement, but she's the hated wife of Jacob. And in a way, they present again the split between the desired woman and the fruitful, and the mother of the sons. And this Midrash trying to somehow unite the two women, and instead of a kind of battle between women in a patriarchal world, we have sisterhood. Because she says her, come you and I will go out. It's a switch of what we call Beatrix. Yes, they switch roles and they're working together to build together this birth of the Messiah. The Messiah is born from this plot, which happens behind the closed door, those secrets between women. And the wife of Ishai, she is not redhead, but the baby looks like the handmaid. So some miraculous moment happens here because Ishai thinking about the handmaid. She's the desirable woman. So the baby looks like the handmaid, although he was born to the correct and kosher mother. They believed in the ancient world that the child is like the fantasies during intercourse. But what we see here is a subversive narrative, how those women, through sisterhood, they turn the heart of the Rosh Sanhedrin. He's the head of Sanhedrin. He's very noble person, and yet he's not behaving correctly. So they correct his behavior, and that's how David is born. The chosen son doesn't look like his brothers. That's why they want to kill him, because she's accused with promiscuity, but she was correct, the mother. We see here a variation of the ancient plot in a new way, explaining that Messiah can never come into proper way. He cannot be born in normal way, and thinking about through Freudian and then Otto-Rank pattern of the birth of the hero, we see here against the struggle against the conditions, because there is a fear of death. Maybe this is also connected to this image of the death of the Messiah. He was almost killed by his brothers, and his mother, she's full of fear, but she knows that she behaved correctly. So there is also here, again, change of these hierarchies between masculine and feminine figures in the plot. Who is leading, actually, the story into its happy end, and how the baby was born. Okay. Doesn't working. Oh my God, sorry. Okay. I want to add something about Kabbalah and then about Mary. In the Zohar, the stories of the mothers of the Messiah subverts gender hierarchy in another way. Tamar and Ruth, the mothers of the Messiah, presented as masculine figures. In which way? Because in the Kabbalistic thought, active behavior is masculine and passive behavior is feminine. So the active deeds of the mothers of the Messiah, they go, they seduce, they lead the plot, and that's why they are the masculine. But David himself, he's only born. That's what he did. He's passive. He's like the Shekhinah. He's like the container, Amichal. He is this image of the Shekhinah's container of the divine flow, but they're much more active. So there is another interesting moment that, for example, in the Zohar, they say that Ruth and Tamar hishtadlu. Now, hishtadel, it's worked hard, but always we use this term lishtadel b'Torah in Torah studies, something which attached to very masculine activity when you working into this devotion to God and to the Torah. Tamar and Ruth in the Zohar presented as those who ishtadlu. They worked very hard to actually not only for their son, the babies who were born, but since we talk here about Gilgul, transmiguration, and also levirate marriage, Yibum, because they helped the dead. They helped actually to rescue the dead from being forgotten. The way they bring forth the Messianic redemption means that in a way we can change the past. And it's very interesting Zoharic idea. We are not changing only future. It's something also about messianism. They changed the past because all those men who were dead without sons, the first husbands of Tamar, and Ruth, who were supposed to get married with someone else, and Boaz rescue her. So actually they're helping to those men who has no memory, the first husband of Ruth, of course, the sons of Naomi, who were dead, Machlon and Kilion. So you rescue the dead from oblivion, from total lost in memory through the babies who were born to those Hebrews and into the Messianic genealogy. And it is one aspect of their activity. I want to show now, the Zohar also says very interesting about the daughters of Lot, because we have this idea that also the earthly father is not there. He's missing father, Lot. He didn't know when she lay down or when she rose. Now the Poal know, Ladat, in the Bible, it's also about sexuality, it's about sexual knowledge. Adam yada et Chava ishto, and Adam knew his wife Eve. So when it said velo yada b'shochva u'bekuma, Lot doesn't know when his first daughter, the oldest, and then the second one seduced him in the cave of Tzoar when Sodom was distracted. They play with the double meaning of ladat. And then we have two readings. The Talmud uses this knowing, not knowing, to condemn Lot. Maybe he didn't know when she lay down, but of course he knew when she raised. And also the church fathers, we have it in Hieronymus and others, Augustinus, if I remember correctly, they say you don't know when someone lying with you, especially if it's your daughter. You must know in some stage, in some point, how long can you be in this forgotten place of not knowing? So it's a blame on Lot that he knew, actually, he knew. But of course, ladat, lo ladat, all this game of meaning of knowing, it's also about this myth, because the father, he's not there. Moab and Ammon, the two children born in Genesis 19 to the daughters of Lot, are the grandparents of Ruth the Moabite. Moab and then Ruth the Moabite came. The lineage begins and ends with those kind of stories of not corrected sexual relationship. And here we have maybe the worst case, incest in this cave, although both church fathers and the sages says they thought the world was destroyed. No one left. So they just want to keep continuity to life. That's why the daughters themselves are not condemned, but Lot is blamed for his deed, both in Christian and Jewish text. But the Zohar again goes to emphasize the feminine activity. The feminine heroines are actually masculine, and the baby who is born, he's passive. He's not knowing, like the father who doesn't know. Who is the real father of those births? God. Both Ammon and Moab, the father-in-law doesn't know, but God is there to give this sperm. And then it's again, we see how it influenced by the idea of virginal birth and miraculous conception, of course, because he doesn't know. And the Zohar says supernal assistants attending this act. Supernal assistants attending this act, from which King Messiah was destined to issue. So here, Vav, there is a dot on the Bible. That day, she really rose. Bayom hahu hayta la tkuma. They play with the meaning of the verse in the Bible. Velo yada b'shochva u'bekuma. He didn't know when she lay and when she rose. The word rose, Kuma, is also Messianic redemption. Kuma is the rise of the Messiah, the fallen Messiah, and she did it. The mother, not the son, not the baby, not the hero, not God who is issuing it and protecting from far away, but she is the one who actively brings forth redemption. I see that time is running, so I want just to show you this beautiful reading about Mary. There is also very interesting about Tamarina, but let's see the Quran. So Mary is the only heroine in the Quran who has a name. Women in the Quran always are daughters of, mothers of, and so on. She's the only feminine figure who has a name, and it's striking. But what is much more striking, we have a narrative telling the birth of Jesus in this Surah 19. We have here all those narratives we know from ancient Judaism and Christianity, but I wanted to show something else. We have some ideas which are a mixture of Jewish and Christian world. But the most striking one is the jump of Mary, who can live both in ancient time. She can live both in the 1300 BC, because she is the sister of Aaron and Moshe. She is the biblical Miriam from the book of Exodus. But at the same time, she's the mother of Jesus from the 1st century AD. So we jump, and in a way, she can be all those feminine figures overcoming time. And she is again the active one. She's taking him and she goes far away, and she got the instructions. And we have here Annunciation scene. So we have here collection of images from Jewish world and Christian world in the adaptation and new interpretation of the Quran. And in another place in the Surah Imran, the family of Amran, we see that she is this Mary, Miriam, the biblical Mary, is the mother of Jesus. And not like of course, we know not much about Miriam, the prophet, Mary, but we think that according to the biblical narrative, she has no children and no husband. And then the sages come and say, of course, she was married, she has kids, because this is the correct position for women in the Jewish world. So they're trying to fix it through midrashic rewriting. But we see that in Exodus 2, there is only this statement: a man from the house of Levi married a Levite woman, and Beit Levi, the woman conceived and bore a son who is a Moses. But we know nothing about this woman. We have Aaron, Moshe, and sister Miriam in different places, the prophet Miriam. But here, what unique in the Quranic reading is the combination of Mary, the biblical Mary, and Christian Mary into one figure. And again, this question regarding virginity, promiscuity, and the active aspect of the mother of the Messiah. So if we go back to these stories of the Messianic mothers and different variation we have in those three traditions, I would say that when the Zohar invent feminine Messiah, it's also kind of, I would say, David is also his mothers, the Jewish mothers, the Christian mothers, the Muslim mother in the Quran. It's kind of a way of talking about the son. And if we speak psychoanalytically, it's interesting because the baby knows, and here I'm going at the last sentence to something which I am trying to deal in my study on psychoanalysis and Kabbalah, but there is this concept that a woman in a way is dead at her birth. She's giving new life, but something is dead inside her. She must, it's kind of a sacrifice, we can say. It's a sacrifice into motherhood. And the baby symbolizes also in personal level a way of messianic redemption of the mother. Freud would say that it's also only the male son, but okay, we can question this aspect. But the death of the mother during birth is something which the son knows and the daughter knows, because we go through our mothers when we are born. So we know something. And then talking about not the private, rather the collective myth, this baby in the myth of the dead Messiah, he knows something about all deaths in history, all deaths of the mothers. And it's kind of also rectification and improvement of this hierarchy of the place of the mothers in the history of the Messianic births during history. Thank you very much.